Thank you for joining me today in part 3 of our Sit With It series. This is episode 2, Friends, Family, and Race. Before we get started, I want to give a big thanks to the Latino Collection, the San Antonio Public Library, and to you for being here and making this all happen. Now, let's jump in. All right, so today's agenda. So, first, I'm sure you want to know a little bit about me and what brings me here today. Then we will discuss the purpose of today's episode. I will give a brief summary of what the Black Lives Matter movement is and its impact on social media. We will discuss how to deem a source credible. I will dive into a little bit of intercultural communication theory to help make sense of all of this. And then I will discuss what to do with all of this information. All right, now time to meet me.
We thought it might be a good idea to put a face with a voice. So I'm Oliana Castro, but you can call me Ollie. Now, I grew up in Sonora, Texas, but now I currently live in the suburbs of Austin. However, San Antonio is very near and dear to my heart. I used to work in San Antonio for a brief amount of time, and my mom is a retired Army major who now resides in San Antonio, so I'm there often. I am also an alumni of the Latina Leadership Institute, so shout out to any of my hermanas watching this right now. Now, I am no stranger to tough topics, having conversations around tough topics. I've done research in how LGBTQIA plus Latinx individuals communicate with their parents about their sexuality and sex. I've also researched how women communicate about abortion both here in the United States and in the UK. Now I live, I live in Austin, but now I help my husband start his business. I am a UX design student and I work with developing cultural dialogue. And then on the side, I chase around my 2 puppies and cat. But enough about me. Let's jump back into the slides.
Man, I don't know about y'all, but it's always so difficult to watch myself back on camera. All right, so why are we here and what are we even talking about today? We are here to learn about Black Lives Matter movement and where it comes from and what it means. We're here to become equipped with strategies on how to engage with others online. We're here to gain the ability to recognize a credible source, super important, and to have an action plan on what steps to take next. All right, so starting the dialogue. Pull out your handy dandy notebook and pen because we're going to get that brain moving. Please feel free to respond to the following questions by simply brainstorming and writing down your thoughts. There are no right or wrong answers, so write whatever you feel as you hear the question. First set of questions. What are your favorite social media platforms? And what do you primarily use social media for? I'll give you a minute to write. Okay, so I have my answers written down and I'll share with y'all. I use a range of social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I used to have TikTok, but I deleted it for reasons you have probably heard about if you read the news. But that's a separate discussion. I primarily use social media for staying in contact with friends and family. Okay, and I will shamelessly admit that I meme hoard, so I have everything that makes me chuckle stored on my phone. I also use it for work purposes too. As a student in the tech industry, social media is a great place to network during these isolating times. However, there are often issues when it comes to finding information and sorting out what is true and what's false. Whether it be a sensationalized video from an unknown source, Facebook posts that go viral claiming they have factual evidence, social media has become grounds for confusion, and I totally understand that. But it's so important to share information that's based on facts. But Ollie, how do I know what is credible? Well, I've laid out a few tips for you. Let's start with the first one. All right, so beware of websites that, one, have amateurish designs and try to play on your emotions. So ask yourself, does the website use language that evokes your emotions? Those are often signs that information is not trustworthy, and you should research it further by checking other sources. Beware of websites that contain the suffix LO. I mean, I don't see these often, but some examples of these websites that end in are websites that end in quote newslo or .com.co. These often present false information or they're satirical information. Beware of websites that urge you to dox an individual or organization. This means the website is trying to use information against a person or organization for defamation purposes, attacking their character. Be aware of websites that use clickbait. This is a term you've probably heard of before, but clickbait typically means sensationalist headlines and odd photos whose purpose is not to publish legitimate news, but to increase traffic at a website. So you'll see them when they sound really outlandish or seem like they're trying to catch your attention. And then lastly, beware of websites that use news in the form of memes. Always Google to check information you may see on a meme or a viral Facebook post. Question where this information came from. All right, next, here are some strategies you can use when you see a source that might seem a little suspicious. First, evaluate your sources. Is this site written for students, professionals, or the general population? If you're unsure, check their About page. And if they don't have an About page, then you might want to see why. Second, check the facts. There are many fact-checking websites online. A good fact-checking service will use neutral wording and will provide unbiased sources to support their claims. And then lastly, think about the purpose of the source. Is the purpose to provide information, entertain, persuade, or specific information to a trade or industry, such as like a newsletter about tech or the oil field? All right, second set of questions. What comes to mind when you think of Black Lives Matter? How would you define Black Lives Matter to others? Remember, there are no right or wrong answers. All right, so the definition of Black Lives Matter from the blacklivesmatter.com is Black Lives Matter began as a call to action in response to state-sanctioned violence and anti-Black racism. Our intention from the very beginning was to connect Black people from all over the world who have shared desire for justice to act together in their communities. Either you may be thinking this, or you have heard a friend or a family member say, Ollie, don't all lives matter? Yes, but I can go on and on about my response to this, but I found this great and entertaining video to represent the movement and to show what it means.
Kanye West, oh man. This is gonna be delicious, I can tell you that much. Oh, big one. Oh, stop it. And there you go.
Excuse me, where's my plate?
You don't get a plate.
Why not?
It doesn't matter.
My plate matters.
Hey, all plates matter.
Yeah, of course they do. I'm just saying, where's my plate?
Are you saying your plate matters more than mine?
Yeah, my plate matters too.
Okay, but you all have your plates and I don't have mine. So what's the problem with what I'm saying? And you know what? I didn't get the right drink either. I asked for a cup of just ice. You gave me just air.
Who the hell orders just ice?
I like the way it tastes when it melts.
So you want water?
No, I want a cup of just ice.
You don't get justice.
I mean just ice.
Well, if I don't get just ice, you don't get a tip. No just ice, no tip. No just ice, no tip. No just ice, no tip.
Hey, you don't get to deny the waiter his tip. You don't know what he has to go through with these customers.
He won't give me my plate.
Man, you don't understand the poor man's situation and his side of the story.
Everyone saw him deny me my plate in just ice.
I didn't say that.
I didn't see that either. Wow.
Well, I mean, you have a history of not tipping, so maybe you didn't deserve the just ice.
Really, you gonna go there?
Okay, you know what? Let's just ask the waiter why he didn't bring the plate and a cup of just ice.
Well, he was looking at the menu for a suspiciously long time.
I was ordering food.
And he tried to reach for one of the straws on my belt.
I needed a straw. Give me the straw.
Jesus, Thomas! What's wrong with you, man?
That's enough of that.
I just chill.
Can I get you guys anything else?
No just ice, no tip. No just ice, no tip. No.
All right, so what happened in that video? Obviously, the man did not receive his plate and did not get just ice. How stinking clever is that? But what was your reaction to that video? Was there a clear depiction of someone not receiving the same treatment as the rest of the table? More than likely, if you're here, you understand the Black Lives Matter movement. However, you may know someone who might not. So this might be a good and fun tool to use to kind of get them to understand what Black Lives Matter means and why we say that and not all lives matter. Now, let's keep that information in our back pocket for now. I promise it will all come together at the end. But now for our next set of questions.
Kanye West.
All right. What do you do when you see someone post something you don't agree with online? How does this make you feel? And why does it make you feel like that? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Now, before moving on to the next slide, you feel this way because you may see it, or we may see it, as a form of conflict. We have friends on our social media for a reason. It may be because they're our aunt's cousin, first removed, but always brings that good dip to holiday parties. Or they may be our friends from high school, or colleagues from work. But bottom line is we have some connection, or else you may have hit the denied request button. Now, I mentioned a word, and that word was conflict. So conflict is defined by perceived or real incompatibility of goals, values, expectations, process, or outcome between two or more interdependent people or groups. Now, you may not see your friends online as someone that you're interdependent with, but as mentioned earlier, we have some connection to the people we have on our Facebook and on our Twitter. So whatever they post may reflect or may incite some kind of emotion on us. Now, looking at an intercultural framework, cultures typically view conflict as one of two different ways. One is conflict as opportunity. And conflict as opportunity is the idea that conflict is normal and all issues are subject to change through negotiation. Direct confrontation, such as resistance and conciliation, are valued. And conflict is a necessary renegation of an implied contract, a redistribution of opportunity, release of tension, and renewal of relationships. So if I were to summarize the first state of conflict as opportunity, it would be conflict as a way to reconstruct and to build and to learn different perspectives. Now, there's also conflict as destructive. So with this framework, conflict is destructive disturbance of peace. Conflict is the social system should not be adjusted to meet the needs of members. Rather, members should adopt to establish values. Confrontations are destructive and ineffective, and disputants should be disciplined. So this is seeing conflict as in a negative light and how we should not participate in conflict because of these bullet points. Now, the US typically falls in category number 1. We can disagree with others in the workplace, and it may be common to disagree with family members. But it's not always a bad thing. When we disagree and create conflict online, there are strategies we can take to be constructive with our words, and importantly, be constructive and save our energy. Now, these next steps, or this next slide is going to contain steps on how to combat that conflict. All right, so these are the 8 steps to disagreeing online without being disagreeable. So step 1, knowing when to step in. Before you engage in a disagreement, it's helpful to think about whether it's the right time and place for this conversation. If you are on a public social media platform, think about who else will see this disagreement. Do you have colleagues online? Do you have your grandma who may share some cat pictures every now and then? You should take these people into consideration also. You should also consider the person you're about to disagree with. You should choose to engage with those who are showing civil behaviors. On the other hand, if your goal for entering a disagreement is to win, you may want to step back and examine why you feel that way. A discussion doesn't mean imposing your opinion, and you don't want to have knee-jerk and reflexive responses that will shut down the other person's interest in engaging. Finally, imagine yourself a week or month from now and how you will feel about the argument. Taking yourself out of the moment can help put the situation in context before you begin. Step 2, consider other perspectives. It can be easy to focus on your own feelings and not consider your counterparts. Before you begin a disagreement online, try to ask yourself what they want from the situation and why they are posting. It can also be helpful to view the disagreement from a third-party perspective. How would someone outside the situation view your disagreement? Don't be shy to reach out to a friend and ask them what they think about the post and what they think on what their opinion is on what you should do. Step 3, ask the right questions. Now, this is probably my favorite strategy. Once you've decided to take part in a disagreement, try using these probing questions to find common ground. Ask, have you considered blank possibility? Ask, I can't quite envision how this will work out. What about blank? This gives your counterpart a chance to consider potential problems and possibly modify or change their viewpoint without seeming like you're attacking. You might discover something that changes your perspective as well. Now, step 4, listen and listen again. Just in a real-world conversation, you should spend most of your time listening to what others are saying. For a disagreement online, this means reading their responses carefully and looking for meaning behind their words. If you respond without reading and addressing what they are writing, you'll both keep making the same points over and over again. Step 5, remember there's no body language online. We rely on nonverbal communication in our everyday interactions to convey what we truly mean. Unfortunately, when we engage online, nonverbal communication is almost non-existent. Sure, we have emojis, but they can only do so much for us. It may be difficult for your counterpart to tell if you're being humorous or sarcastic. Step 6, watch out for warning signs. As your conversation continues, be on the lookout for warning signs that may signal it's time to politely step away. And remind yourself that it's okay to step away. Watch out for distraction techniques such as personal attacks, ultimatums and threats, name calling, Disputes that are based on inaccurate statements or deeply held beliefs. Look out for other people jumping in and taking sides and basing opinions on their emotions. And lastly, a breakdown in respectful discussion. Step 7. Know when to walk away. If you see some of the warning signs above, or you find that the argument is going nowhere, it's okay to walk away from it. You do not have to have the last word. And the final step, step 8, maintain relationships. You're not trying to humiliate or embarrass the person you're disagreeing with. At the end of the day, you decide to engage in this disagreement to grow and challenge yourself. Remember that maintaining relationships is more important than winning an argument. People we interact with online often feel like strangers, but it's still important to maintain a relationship. You should also consider your conversation can be seen by many others, and nothing online really goes away. Remember, there are other people reading your comments too, so how would they perceive this interaction? All right, now that we've established the 8 steps to disagree online without being disagreeable, let's jump back to the topic of Black Lives Matter and why we brought this up in the first place. All right, so unfortunately, Black Lives Matter is a polarizing topic on social media. There are countless articles about people's, primarily teenagers, trying to talk about race with their families, even parents trying to figure out how to discuss, have this conversation to their children. Now, where do we go from here? Now that we have the tools to explain to our friends and family what Black Lives Matter means, we are also equipped with how to spot legitimate information, and we understand how to navigate conflict. But now what? Now it's time to become an ally. But what does it mean to be an ally? Allies are people who recognize the unearned privilege they receive from society's patterns of injustice and take responsibility for changing these patterns. Now, that is the textbook definition. To be an ally, in my own words, is to step back and give space, allowing advocates to express their concerns, struggles, and advice on how to take action. Being an ally also means spreading proper knowledge and amplifying those voices. Allyship online. So to be an ally online, here are some 3 tips on how to do that appropriately. Step 1, ask yourself why you are posting. First, you need to think about your own intent. If the goal of a post is to make you feel like you did something for an ongoing struggle that reaches back to the very roots of our country's history, that's not the right reason. Also, ask if your post is highlighting their struggles, if your post is highlighting your own struggles. There is always a time for that, but if you are a non-Black American, it is not constructive to use the Black Lives Matter movement to direct attention away from the cause. Instead, as an ally, your social media post should be centered on what Black activists need in your area, which might be achieved through monetary support or by lifting up the things they're sharing or talking about. Step 2, educate your friends and family. Signing petitions, sharing petitions, and donating are tangible ways to be an ally online. You can also take today's tools to explain Black Lives Matter to your friends and family. Show them the video from earlier if you seem to not be able to connect. Redirect your friends and family to our resources. And if you need extra material, you can always reach out to us. Use the tactics explained in our Disagreeing Without Being Disagreeable slide also when communicating online. And then take note of your emotional response when critiqued. This one I think is really important because we all here have good intentions. However, there might be times where our intentions aren't quite, or when our intentions miss the mark. So if an advocate is reaching out to you and giving you a critique on how to be an ally, don't take it too hard and listen to that person and appreciate and thank them for their constructive criticism and use that as a learning opportunity. All right. Now, that was a lot of information and a lot of steps, a lot of tools that we have. So, lastly, let's reflect on today's episode. I want you to pull out your pen and paper again and think, what is one thing you've learned today in this session? The community in San Antonio is so strong and united. I truly believe notable change can happen. What are some things you can share from this presentation with your friends and family? I hope you can take this information and talk to your friends and family about a difficult conversation such as race. Lastly, what are your questions you have about these issues still? This topic is so in-depth, and thankfully we have 3 episodes to discuss it. However, this discussion may prompt more questions that you might have. Just know our inbox is always open. For further readings and resources for this episode, please refer to this page. And thank you once again for attending our session. If you would like to reach out or need any other, would like more information or to ask us questions as we discussed in 2 slides ago, please feel free to follow us at DCD Cultural, and that is on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we will see you again for episode 3.